The primary challenge we see in the research we've done with the U.S. industrial base is that it is not adequately prepared for the security landscape that now exists. In a major regional conflict, such as a U.S. war with China in the Taiwan Straits, the U.S. would exceed in that war the current stockpile of the Department of Defense. So, for example, with long-range anti-ship missiles, or LRASMs, in our war games, the U.S. runs out of those LRASMs in less than a week of a war. So we have an industrial base that is not prepared for a wartime environment or a near wartime environment. That raises a lot of questions, for example, about the ability of the U.S. to deter the Chinese if we have such limited munitions stockpiles for major long-range munitions like the LRASM. What the war in Ukraine has shown us is that wars, unlike, say, Iraq or Afghanistan, wars with a major power, they are industrial-style wars. In order to sustain an industrial-style war, like what we see between Russia and Ukraine, you need a constant supply of munitions to be able to fight. And I think when you look at the challenges of bringing munitions, 155 millimeter, for example, both munitions and then the howitzers that go with that, javelins and stingers. It's been very difficult for the industrial base to provide advanced amounts of this type of equipment. And it's a war that the United States and European countries aren't even fighting directly. So it would be an order of magnitude different if we were to see them actually participate in the war as opposed to just aid. So what some of the CSIS war games have been built around are a Chinese amphibious invasion of Taiwan. And the challenge there is that that fight, much like in some ways World War II, is one that is fought over large distances. And so what it requires for the U.S. is the U.S. needs lots of long-range precision munitions to target amphibious Chinese forces trying to move across the Taiwan Strait to land equipment and invading personnel onto Taiwan. The problem is the U.S. has such low stockpiles for those long-range anti-ship missiles, or LRASMs, that in our war games, multiple iterations of the war games, we run out in less than a week virtually every time. So the problem is we cannot fight, in that case, a protracted war because we don't have sufficient supply of munitions. And that puts us not just at a disadvantage in terms of fighting, but also, before fighting, deterring that conflict from even happening in the first place. There is a serious urgency to fixing the U.S. defense industrial base right now. As we saw in World War II, it can take years for the defense industrial base to mobilize to fix some of these problems. Therefore, it is critical to do this now before it's too late. And again, this is just as much for deterrence purposes as it is for warfighting. To see our research, analysis, and policy recommendations, visit csis.org.